You're listening to NightLore, where the stories aren't just stories. Tonight's tale isn't a legend passed around campfires. It's a confession from a man who worked hundreds of feet above the forest in the middle of nowhere. He says he climbed that tower to make a living and came down with something that still follows him. This is his story, one that never made the news, one the company buried under a fire report. So turn off the lights, put your phone face down, and remember, when you're alone out there in the dark sometimes, what you see isn't half as dangerous as what sees you. This is the Tower Crane Incident. If I told you what I saw up there, you wouldn't believe me. But I still have the burns. And every time I close my eyes, I hear the wind howling through steel. I've worked cranes for 20 years across oil fields, city towers, and mines, but never this deep in the woods. This site sits miles north of Jasper, surrounded by pine fog and silence. Out here, the wind never stops. It moans against the cabin glass and makes the metal groan like it's alive. You learn to live with it, or you start talking to yourself. Every night I climbed 140 meters up the steel frame with 2 drinks, a thermos of coffee, and a bottle wrapped in an old flannel. One to stay awake, one to stop shaking. It's not something I'm proud of, but it's hard to be sober when you live in a box of glass and steel high enough that the clouds roll beneath you. Nobody sees what you do up there. Nobody checks. That night, I had Ellie's book sitting on my lap, a cheap paperback called Field Guide to North American Cryptids. She'd given it to me last time I visited home. Said, "You get lonely up there, Dad. This'll keep you company." There was a sticky note on the first page written in her big, messy letters. "Don't get eaten, Dad. You're too grumpy for that." It was a kid's joke, but I'd kept it. I don't see her often. Custody's a mess after the divorce. Her mother says, I need to prove I can be stable. So I take these contracts months away from home, living in a trailer to make enough for child support. I tell myself, it's worth it. Maybe next time I'll take Ellie skating, like I promised, buy her those white boots she wanted. I just have to keep working, keep climbing. The night air was colder than the forecast. I took a swig of whiskey to warm the edges, leaned back, and watched the tree line far below turn black against the moon. The radio whispered, with background chatter, static numbers, the kind of half-sentences that fill long nights. Then a new voice, cut in sharp and uncertain. "Hang on. There's something down by the tree line." I straightened up. The lights from the trailer yard stretched long across the brush, turning pine needles silver. At first, I thought it might be a bear, maybe a moose. But the voice on the radio wasn't calm. "Movement by Tower 4. You guys seen that?" Then a burst of static, followed by a half-scream. "Geez, what is that?" The signal died. I felt a chill crawl through me, one that had nothing to do with altitude or wind. "Mark," I called into my mic. "Say again." Nothing. Below me the light flickered, as if something had passed in front of it. Then all at once, people started running. Tiny silhouettes against the glow of the trailers, scattering in every direction. I leaned forward until my forehead hit the glass. One of them tripped near the fuel cages. Something else burst out of the dark behind him, fast, low, and wrong. It hit him so hard, he went weightless for a second before folding sideways. Another man ran in to help. The thing met him, halfway lifted him clean off the ground, and threw him into the floodlight tower. Metal crashed, sparks jumped, and the cage of fuel drums went up like dry kindling. Flames tore across the camp, catching tires, top, everything. Even from up high, I could tell it wasn't just chasing them. It was hunting. The radio exploded with screams and static. Someone cried for help. Someone else just kept repeating a name. Then the noise cut off in a single wet crunch. For a long moment, all I could hear was fire, then movement. Something tall crouched near the last burning trailer, half lit by the flames. Its arms hung too long, its elbows bending wrong, and above its head, branching back like burnt wood, were antlers. It turned slowly toward the crane. And I knew, even before it moved, that it had seen me. I stumbled back from the glass, heart pounding. The radio in my hand crackled with dead air. I wanted to call for help, but what would I say? There's a thing with antlers killing my crew. No one would believe me. Outside, the fire's glow flickered across the base of the crane. For a moment, I lost sight of it, swallowed by smoke, and then I saw movement at the ladder. It was climbing, slow at first, deliberate. One long arm after another, claws curling around the steel rungs. The way it moved made my stomach twist. It didn't pull itself up, it flowed. Each motion was too smooth, too strong. I grabbed the fire extinguisher, bolted beside the seat, heavy steel, dented at the top, and dragged it to the hatch. If it made it halfway up, maybe I could drop it on its head. I cracked the door open. Heat and smoke slammed my face. Down below, faint through haze and light, I could just make out the shape inching upward. I aimed and dropped the extinguisher. It bounced off a beam, spun in the air, and vanished into smoke. I didn't hear a hit. When I leaned out again, it had stopped climbing. One long arm hung loose. The other clutched the rail. Then it tilted its head back and looked up. Even from that height, I saw its face clearly barebone, stretched too long, like a deer skull that had forgotten how to be an animal. The sockets were black, bottomless. The antlers curled back and split like fingers. And in that instant, I knew it wasn't an animal at all. I slammed the hatch, locked it, and backed into the cabin until my spine hit the wall. The whole crane hummed with the heat below. My hand shook as I grabbed the radio. Anyone copy? This is Marcus, up in Tower 1. There's something climbing the crane. Please, anyone respond. Static hissed back. Nothing else. Silence. Only the soft hiss of burning fuel and the wind against the glass. I thought of Kyle, the new kid on site. 3 days ago, we'd sat behind the trailers, eating lunch boots in the dirt. He'd been proud of finding a tooth out by the tree line, a human tooth, wrapped it in a napkin, and carried it in his pocket like proof of something. Said there were dozens more under the roots. He'd reported it, but the foreman laughed, called it old dental waste from the war camps. Now I knew what he'd really dug up. Smoke pressed against the cabin windows, turning the moon a dull red. I looked down at the yard and saw nothing moving. No people, no shadows, just the fire eating through what was left. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. 1 bar. I dialed 911 anyway. Emergency. Hello, yes, I'm here. My name's Marcus Holt. I'm at a tower site off range 6. There's been an attack. People are dead. It's climbing the crane. Say again. Climbing. It's coming up the crane. I'm trapped at the top. Static swallowed the rest. Then nothing. I dropped the phone in my lap, shaking. My throat burned. I took a sip from the bottle, but it didn't help. Everything inside me trembled. My boot hit something on the floor, the book Ellie had given me. It had fallen open pages, bent the sticky note, still peeking out. Don't get eaten, Dad. I ran my thumb across her handwriting. For a second, the fire outside didn't matter. The creature didn't matter. All I could see was her smiling with missing front teeth, begging me to take her skating. I'd promised I would. Now I wasn't sure I'd ever get that chance. When I wiped my eyes, the book was still open. There on the next page was a drawing rough, like an old woodcut. A tall, thin creature crawling on all fours, with a skull for a face and antlers like burned branches. The title read, The Wendigo. It said the creature was born from starvation and cannibalism, cursed to roam the winter forest, that it brought the cold with it, that it could never be full. And as I read, the air in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. The glass fogged over again, and from the hatch below came a faint metallic clang, the sound of something still climbing. The word Wendigo stuck in my head like a splinter. I stared at the picture on the page, ribs like fence posts, arms too long, skull too narrow. And I realized it wasn't climbing to get me. It was climbing because of the fire. The flames had boxed it in below, and I'd seen it recoil when the heat reached the trailers. The bastard was running from the one thing that could hurt it. And now, with nowhere left to go, it was coming up. I flipped back through the pages with shaking fingers. The text said fire could kill it, or at least stop it. Something about burning away its hunger. I didn't know what that meant, but it was the first hint of hope I'd had all night. Outside the camp had collapsed into a single orange crater of fire. The wind pushed black smoke up the tower. When I cracked the hatch, it hit me like a wall. I coughed hard and nearly dropped the book. Below, I heard the scrape of metal, the sound of claws against rungs. It was close now. I backed away and tried the radio again. This is Marcus Holt, Tower 1. There's something here. People are dead. I need static. I thought of Ellie again, her voice that half-laughing tone when she said, "Don't get eaten." Dad. It sounded almost playful then. Now it felt like a prayer. I checked everything. I had a wrench, a toolbox bolted to the floor, an empty thermos, and the bottle. Half full. Whiskey, flammable. The idea hit me slow like a spark that finally caught. Could it work? A Molotov cocktail like the ones you see in riot footage. I'd never tried one. Didn't even know if it would explode or just burn. But I was out of choices. I tore a strip from the old flannel and jammed it into the bottleneck, pressing it down with my knife handle until it soaked. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely tie a knot. I dug the lighter out of my pocket-scratched metal with a faded sticker of a woman on the side. Kyle's lighter. I'd taken it by accident. Now it might save me. I kept telling myself, wait until you can see it. Don't waste it. Then came the clangs, faster, closer. It was moving quick now, desperate, like an animal cornered. The crane vibrated with its weight. I flicked the lighter. Nothing. My fingers were slick with sweat. I wiped them on my jeans. Tried again. Spark. Flame. I stepped to the hatch, gagging on the smoke that rolled in. Down the ladder, through the fog, I saw it a pale shape against black steel ribs, scraping bones shining like glass in the firelight. It was only meters away, and it was looking straight up. I lit the rag. The flame crawled fast, licking around the rim. "Come on," I whispered, and threw. The bottle fell maybe 2 seconds. Then a sharp crack echoed up the tower. Glass shattered. Flames leapt. The rag had turned into a burst of orange that wrapped around its skull and shoulders. It screamed a sound that ripped through me, half wind and half voice. It clung to the ladder, thrashing every motion, setting more of it alight. I saw fire run down its ribs like molten veins. It tried to climb again, as if it could pull itself through the pain, but the fire crawled faster than it could move. One arm slipped, then the other. The leg kicked once hard enough to shake the frame. Then it fell. It didn't just drop. It pinwheeled, hitting the metal struts on the way down a rhythm of dull impacts until it vanished into the fire below. Each hit sent sparks upward, fading in the smoke. Then silence. Only the wind and the groan of cooling steel. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the hatch. The smell of burnt whiskey and fur filled the cabin. I couldn't tell if it was really over. The book said it could never be full. What if fire wasn't enough? What if it was still down there, waiting? My body finally gave in. I slid down the wall and sat on the cold floor, shaking so hard my teeth clattered. The world outside hissed with dying flames. Somewhere, tires popped one by one, little explosions in the distance. And I thought, maybe someone will see the smoke. Maybe someone will come. I stayed that way until the sky began to pale. When I finally heard sirens, I thought I was dreaming. The sound drifted up with the wind, faint, distant human. I crawled to the window. Through the smoke, I saw flashes of red and white weaving through the trees. Rescue crews? They'd come. I opened the hatch and looked down. The steel rungs were black with soot. I started climbing slow, every limb heavy. Halfway down, someone shouted, "Hey, we got a survivor on the tower." Lights turned upward, blinding me. Hands waved from below, voices overlapping. I kept going one rung at a time until my boots hit solid ground. The moment they did, my legs gave out. Someone caught me. They wrapped a blanket over my shoulders, asked my name if I could walk. I just pointed at the base of the crane. Lying there among the twisted beams was what was left of it. A blackened shape, too long, too thin. The antlers had snapped against the steel. One leg was missing. The flesh looked melted gray, waxy, fused to bone. One of the firefighters crouched beside me. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "We didn't know anyone was still up there." I shook my head. "Not luck," I muttered. "Just fire." He didn't understand. That was fine. They loaded me onto a stretcher and rolled me toward the ambulance. I remember glancing back once. Through the heat haze, the shape was still there. Or I thought it was. Smoke curled around it, and for a moment, I swore it moved. A twitch, a breath. Then someone shut the doors, and I couldn't see it anymore. On the ride out, a medic checked my pulse, asked about burns. I barely heard him. My hand was in my jacket pocket, clutching the little book. The sticky note still clung to the page. "Don't get eaten, Dad." I rubbed my thumb across the ink until it smudged. They told the news crews later it was a gas fire, that the workers died in an explosion, that the body they found was a deer burned in the blast. I didn't argue. I just nodded. But a week after they sent me home, I got a call from the site foreman. He sounded shaken. Said, when the coroner showed up, the body was gone. No tracks, no drag marks, just ash. He asked if I'd ever heard of something called a Wendigo. I told him no. Then I hung up. I still keep Ellie's book on the table beside my bed. Some nights, I wake up thinking I hear the creak of metal in the wind. And when I look out the window, I could swear I see smoke on the horizon. It smells like burned whiskey and pine. If you ever work up high in the middle of nowhere and you smell something sweet and rotten on a cold night, don't look toward the trees. Don't call out. And for God's sake, don't light a fire. If you've made it this far, you know how it ends. Officially, it was an accident, a fuel explosion in the woods, one survivor, no witnesses. But if you ask the man who was there, he'll tell you something different. He'll tell you what was crawling up that crane. He'll tell you what fire couldn't keep dead. They said it was over. They were wrong. Because every time the wind howls through steel, every time the night smells like burnt pine and whiskey, he hears it again. And maybe, if you're quiet enough, you'll hear it too. This has been NightLore, where truth and nightmare meet halfway. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with someone who still believes monsters aren't real. Until next time, keep your lights low and your secrets lower.